Hi everyone, I'm Lin-Hua, and I'm a proud board member of Stellar Development Foundation, and I'm here today to moderate a panel with Alex Holmes, the CEO and Chairman of MoneyGram International. And Alex has been at the helm since 2016, and he's led the digital transformation of the company. Really excited that he's here with us today. And Denelle Dixon, who's the CEO and Executive Director of SDF. And I get the pleasure of seeing Denelle in action, and she's really truly a phenomenal leader. And she's helped grow the network and really been an advocate for Stellar globally since 2019. So welcome everyone, and really excited for our conversation today. And I'd love to start out to talk about our exciting new partnership together. And I'm wondering, what have you heard? What feedback have you heard about the partnership? And would you like to start, Denelle?
Sure. I think from the network standpoint and from the folks that are in the ecosystem, the feedback has just been phenomenal, meaning that more and more players want to be involved in it. And they recognize the value that this brings to not just Stellar, but to blockchain generally, where it's transformational. It's an opportunity to really bridge that fiat world with the digital world. And so I think the feedback that we're hearing is they can't wait for it to get started, and they just really want to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, and I'll just add that it's been really exciting for us in both, the investment community, investor community, along with things going on in the media and kind of promoting MoneyGram. We've been on this digital transformation for a number of years, and to really think about progressive innovation and how do we continue to push that agenda. The partnership here is so exciting for us. We've been kind of, I guess, probably a couple, 3 years, maybe longer, 4 years, maybe, that kind of Denelle and I have been talking about, doing something, and so this really brings that to life. And there's a lot of energy, a lot of excitement around it, both internally and externally for MoneyGram. So it's really, really nice to see it coming to life and being able to talk about it. So it's fantastic.
Denelle, what in particular about the partnership excites you the most? What opportunities does it unlock?
I think it's the opportunity to really reach those that don't have bank accounts and those that don't actually have credit cards or wire transfers. Normally, to get into blockchain today, you really need to be able to get your cash and convert it into a digital asset. You need to be able to leverage one of those types of things, either a wire transfer, a credit card, or a bank account. This creates the real opportunity to bring the cash world into blockchain, and to make it so that folks that don't have a bank account can actually leverage their wallet for that purpose. Once they create the digital wallet by bringing the assets onto the network, for example, they can do so much. They can create yield opportunities for themselves. They can send money to their families. They can hold their assets, to hedge against inflation in their local community if they choose to do so. There's just so much opportunity. The developers on the network are the ones that are really creating this coolness about what the wallets can do. But it's this relationship that brings the opportunity for these individuals who historically couldn't get into the blockchain to be able to get in. So that's the part to me that is unique and transformational and super cool. And also it just bridges this world. And we talk about interoperability all the time. This is actually the true interoperable state that we want to get to.
And anything to add to that, Alex?
Yeah, I think the most exciting and I guess maybe dynamic and interesting part for me is that you really have kind of two worlds evolving at the same time, right? We've had all this excitement over the last decade and a half in sort of the payment space, cross-border, what's going on. And that's in the traditional financial markets, right? And that is, covered in regulation and change and everything happening with currencies. And then you've sort of had this complete parallel world evolving with blockchain and digital currencies and all the excitement around that. And what I find is fascinating about both is that they really kind of have the same agenda, right? The traditional financial markets, it's all been about speed and transparency and reliability for cross-border payments. Blockchain, digital assets are trying to do the same thing in a very different way. But again, they rely on speed, they rely on transparency, and really the interoperability between the two exists in a degree, but when you start to bridge the two, the speed goes out the door and it becomes very, very slow, which I find sort of ironic. And to me, I think there's so much dialogue about, will, blockchain and crypto sort of displace the current financial markets, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that's even the right question. I think for me, it's that I think they're going to run together and they're going to interoperate. I think they can both benefit each other in a number of ways, but you have to create the interoperability. We have to start thinking about how do they work and flow together. And so for me, taking MoneyGram and putting it in partnership with SDF and thinking about, how we can make that come to life is really pretty compelling. And so that's, like, I think for me, the most interesting part of it all.
Well, and I think that looking at the idea that what Alex and his team and what MoneyGram International has built over the years, this agent network, it's completely relevant to what's happening because it's the feet on the ground, it's the people in the local regions, it's the folks that are working with the local constituents and bringing them opportunity every day. You can't ignore that that's what blockchain has been missing for years and years. And so now being able to bring those together and to say, like, this agent network is crucial. It's a really important part of being able to get that financial inclusion that we always talk about.
So I'm hearing that interoperability and speed are really important problems to solve for your customers, and having sort of on-the-ground agents is going to bring that to where it needs to be. Other problems or issues that we think that this partnership will really help bridge and solve?
I think it opens up the opportunity for the wallet providers who are already building on Stellar and those who haven't yet started building on Stellar. We'd love for them to come along as well, to be able to gain this access to this new user base and also really create opportunity for them, right, in terms of what I mentioned before in terms of yield. But I also think that this is a really important example of how we're not trying to supplant the existing financial infrastructure, but truly enhance it, because it's just another thing that you can use. It's another rail that's out there that can be leveraged when appropriate, whether that be from a business or the consumer side.
Yeah, and I'll probably add that I think the compliance aspect is an interesting one as well, right? And you know, we live, historically MoneyGram's lived in the cash world, and there's been a big push from regulators to get it more digitized, right? Because there's a view that, you know, cash has a lot of, you know, secrets to it, I suppose is a good way to put it. It's ironic to me, you get into the world of blockchain and you almost have the exact same thing the other direction, which is, oh, well, that's almost, you know, too digital for us, so we want to somehow streamline that. So one of the things that we've really focused on in the relationship has been, how do we create the interoperability, but also, how do we also do it compliantly, right? And so what we're actually doing through the process steps, which you'll probably see in the video when we show you kind of how it works, is that we're actually linking wallets to names and IDs and phone numbers. And so we are creating that enhanced compliance that a lot of regulators are looking for. And I think that's also a very proactive aspect of what we're doing. So you're really creating transparency between two worlds where a lot of regulators are questioning, you know, how transparent is this, and can we really, you know, make it relevant in sort of a regulated world? Because I think regulators always sort of trail, right? They're always a little bit behind, they're always looking back and then trying to catch up. And I think what we're doing here is taking what we know is best standards in the regular financial system and applying that to create that interoperability as well. So there's a lot of things coming together here, which is really, really, really interesting.
Yeah, and from the compliance standpoint, there's also, I mean, this is an immutable record, right? Every time that a transaction is actually finalized on the blockchain, it's an immutable record. And having chain analysis where a company can come in and analyze the chain, it's actually something that's really interesting from a regulatory standpoint, and it's valuable to make sure everything's compliant as well. So there's you know, there's a lot of concern from regulators sometimes about what can and shouldn't be done on the blockchain, but in fact it actually removes a lot of those secrets that he mentioned about the, you know, fiat world, and it actually creates opportunity for a seamless and integrated world, but also for regulatory compliance.
Yeah, it's great. MoneyGram having so much expertise in that world should be really transferable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned a pilot, and I'd love to ask you about the status of that. So when the agreement was signed, you said that the pilot would go live in 2021. So do you have a status update?
I do have a status update on that, and I'll just say that there's really been two key aspects to bringing that to life. So first has been really working with Stellar and the wallets to ensure that we can, you know, create the interoperability for the customer. And we spent a lot of time today talking about the interaction with the consumer. There's a back-end side of it as well, which is sort of all the conversion of USDC and then back into fiat, and we're doing that with our partner Circle. So that aspect has also come together, and it's actually going to enhance the speed of our settlement processes as well. And so we finally got those all in place. We've got all the agreements signed. We've got Elliptic doing the chain analysis. We've plugged everything together, and yeah, the pilot is, I'm proud to say, live and operable, and I think we've got a great video on that.
Awesome, can't wait to see it.
Hello everyone, my name is Jake Urban and I'm a senior software engineer here at the SDF. Today I'm going to show you how to cash in and cash out of USDC using MoneyGram and the Lobster wallet. I should note that this is a pilot for Lobster, MoneyGram, and SDF employees, but this will be available publicly in 2022. Let's get started. As you can see, I'm at the home page of the Lobster mobile app, and I'm going to open up the sidebar menu and select Buy USDC. Lobster has now opened up a MoneyGram hosted deposit window, and I'm going to deposit $200 cash to get 200 USDC on Stellar. I'm currently in Minnesota, so I'll select that for the state. Next, I'll need to find a MoneyGram cash agent I can use to drop off cash, so I'll enter my zip code and see what's close by. Looks like there's one about a mile away. MoneyGram is showing my details of my transaction, and since it all looks good, we're just going to continue. And now since I've already entered my KYC details in a prior transaction, MoneyGram allows me to update my address if necessary, but I don't have to here, so we're just going to keep moving. Now I need to enter my ID number, which will be checked by a MoneyGram agent when I arrive at the location to drop off cash. This is an important step because MoneyGram uses your ID to match with the transaction, so whenever you go to a MoneyGram location, make sure you bring your ID with you. And here's a summary of the transaction. You can see that I'll be providing cash and receiving 200 USDC on Stellar. This looks good, so I'm just going to submit the transaction. And we're done. Now I can go to the MoneyGram location I selected, show my ID, and drop off my cash. I'll see USDC in my wallet before I even leave the agent location. Okay, now that we've deposited cash for USDC with MoneyGram, let's take a look at how withdrawing USDC for cash works. First, I'm going to go to the Assets menu and select USDC. I've already made a few deposits, so I have a balance, and below the Send and Receive options, you'll see that Lobster has Cash In and Cash Out with MoneyGram buttons. Let's cash out. Now we're going to withdraw or cash out $200 from my USDC balance, and we'll enter the state we'd like to pick up the cash. Now, this time, MoneyGram doesn't ask me to select a cash out location because MoneyGram enables me to go to any location in the state to cash out. The amount and fee look good there, so let's continue. My personal information also hasn't changed, so we'll move on from this screen as well. Now, all I have to do is enter my ID information. I'm sure you've noticed by now that the cash out experience is very similar to cash in. The transaction summary looks great, so let's submit it. Okay, MoneyGram is ready to receive my USDC, so let's close this window and send the funds. Once MoneyGram gets my USDC, which should take about 5 seconds, I'll get a reference number, and I can take that to any cash out agent in the state. Looks like our funds were sent. Let's take a look at the transaction and see our reference number. And there it is. All I have to do now is go to a MoneyGram cash agent and show them my ID and reference number to get my cash.
So can you recap what we just saw there?
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see this all come together. We've been working on this for such a short period of time. I just want to call out the fact that the MoneyGram tech folks who've been working with us, they got this done in 2.5 months working with our team. And that's a remarkable time period to be able to get all of these things to come into play. So very excited about this. But what we're showing in this video and what Jake actually showed is that you can walk in to any MoneyGram agent and you can give your cash and say, I want to convert this, and you tell them which wallet you want to convert to. The pilot's focused on Lobster. And you give them the cash, and then you will, within 5 seconds, see the money in your digital wallet. And you'll see it in the form of USDC, which is a stablecoin. The stablecoin part is a really important part of making this work because stablecoin doesn't have the volatility that a cryptocurrency would. So you'll see the balance of your USDC in your wallet. And from there, you can kind of do what you want with it. You can hold it, you can send it, you can cash out right away if you wanted to, which would be a little silly if you cash in and cash out, but you could actually go right back into any MoneyGram facility and pick up the cash that you had on the blockchain. So I mean, the very nature of how this comes together is just remarkable from my standpoint, because it seems so simple that this is something that you should do. And you know, those of us who live in worlds and we're privileged enough to live where there's a bank down the street, this is sort of simple, right? You walk in, you get your cash, you can take your cash out, you can withdraw it. That's just not how it works all over the world. And it is, and now with MoneyGram, it actually allows that kind of thing to work for everyone who doesn't have the bank accounts. So that's what this video was showing, a very simple process using the wallet technology from Lobster and all of the back-end technology and APIs from MoneyGram. It really actually leverages MoneyGram's APIs that they've been working to build. And then, of course, we've created this thing called, we call it an adapter. It's a very technical term. That converts the language to be able to speak in stellar language and just makes it coordinates the conversation between the two entities, the Lobster wallet as well as the MoneyGram APIs. So it's very, it's actually a pretty simple when you see it, but there's a lot of back-end stuff going on.
It seems incredibly seamless, and I could even do that.
I hope so.
Alex, anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're seeing in the video is exactly what we want to happen, right? Which is you've got a wallet and you want to cash in or cash out. And I think that is a very visual depiction of a complicated process that you know has been simplified through our interaction. I think what we've built with the adapter, what we've built with the messaging platform, the communication side of it, and all the compliance going on in the background. And that's the stuff that you don't see, right? You're also not seeing the settlement flows either. So the conversion of the fiat into USDC, the conversion of your coin, maybe you know your Stellar Lumens into USDC, and then how that transfers to Circle and then transfers back into our account. One of the most fascinating things about this entire process for us is that you know we operate today globally in almost every country around the world, and we're settling all of our transactions you know more or less real time, but it's a very inefficient process. And we're, as we proudly say, we're the last ones to get paid. We have, you know, agents taking money on our behalf, agents paying out money on our behalf, and then we're settling with these agents overnight. So the consumers are seeing instant flows, but we're seeing sort of delayed flows, right? In this particular case, what we've set up with Circle through the Stellar network is that we're actually getting USDC into our wallet almost simultaneously while the consumer's USDC is being transferred to Circle itself. So we're actually getting paid almost real time from a settlement flow at the same time the consumer is getting paid. So that is a massive step forward for your traditional financial payments. And I think the ability to do that and bring that to life real time and be able to push that around the world is really compelling and very exciting for us. So that's you know an important aspect of the evolution, because we do spend so much time thinking about consumers, but the real push in blockchain, the real idea around digital assets, right, is that the current financial system can be improved. The current financial system is chunky, it's blocky, it doesn't really work extremely well. There's a lot of reasons for that. You know, most banks are built domestically. Most central banks have a focus on their own economy. They have a focus on their own political agendas. No one really wants to create interoperability around the world globally, except for, I think, you know, blockchain and most of the new consumers today really looking to digitize and change the world. And so this creates that opportunity. This creates that momentum and puts a lot of thought behind how do we change the current financial flows? How do we think differently about how money moves and about how we settle it cross-border in particular? And that is really, really, really compelling. And so that's all the stuff kind of going on in the background. You're not really seeing in the video, but that's also an important part of building a business, right? The consumer should see a seamless interaction. We should have to do all the work, and I think we've done a nice job of that.
And I think it's also important that we're doing it together. You know, there's a lot of push out there to be able to leverage blockchain, but then also to keep everything sort of on the blockchain side and to rebuild everything that's in the traditional financial structure already. And this is the thing I love about it, is that we're actually leveraging what that traditional financial infrastructure is really good at, and then what blockchain's really good at. And so combining those two, and I think that sort of gets lost in the conversation. I think building an agent network all over the world is an incredibly challenging thing to do. And I think the fact that MoneyGram has been able to do this over the years and that blockchain can now use that to be able to benefit blockchain is a pretty remarkable thing to be able to see.
Yeah, seems
Yeah.
like a match made in heaven, actually.
I think well, and I'll add to that further because almost every competitor out there in blockchain and digital assets is telling us, we're here to displace you because you're slow and you're old and you're clunky. And I keep saying, no, I don't have any intention of being displaced. I'm going to partner with the right people. We're going to move MoneyGram, continue to push it forward. And I think that this is illustrative of what we're doing. So for us, it's also a testament, I think, to our vision of the future and how we can evolve with it as well, rather than sort of sitting back and being displaced. We're actually showing a lot of progressiveness and innovation as we push it forward. So I'm very proud of that.
Alex, can you remind us how many countries you operate in right now?
Yeah, we're in, it gets a little vague in territories and things changing politically, regimes, but over 200 countries around the world.
That's quite amazing, right?
Yeah.
So true international network combining like great customer, seamless user interface with making the whole financial infrastructure more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you mentioned, Denelle, that the video that we saw, that technology took only about 2.5 months, which seems really, really quick. How is the collaboration going generally? What else have we been working on?
Yeah, so I think Alex mentioned that we've been talking for several years about being able to put this together. Because we actually were able to bring USDC onto Stellar this year, and we have this really strong digital dollar, it created the right time for this to be able to make this happen. So the Stellar network itself, we have anchors all over the world that have fiat-backed currencies that they actually, stable coins in much the same way, that they can actually leverage locally. But having an agent network out there that has feet on the ground in over 200 countries is a pretty remarkable combination. So as I mentioned, like the collaboration between the two companies has just been phenomenal. Really, honestly, 2.5 months just in the integration piece, which is just remarkable. To be able to bring this to life in a pilot, and then next year to be able to bring it out to the world is a pretty great time period from our standpoint, given that we work with companies all over the world that are integrating and we know how long it can take folks to do that. And then we really want to see this come to life next year, not just with one wallet. We want to see many wallets be able to come into this. The Stellar network has just a significant amount of users in terms of accounts, millions of accounts that are available, of humans that are available to be in contact with through this project. And we have lots of wallets that are already building on Stellar. We call it, when wallets are stellarized, they are Stellar enabled. They're able to leverage the technology. They can connect up to this very simply. In fact, the wallets don't actually have to do anything directly with MoneyGram, because this adapter, they just have to be connected to Stellar, and this adapter leverages MoneyGram's APIs. That makes it so that it's very simple to on-ramp as a wallet to be able to become part of this relationship. So those are like the collaboration and just like working together to be able to bring a very compliant and user-friendly and business-friendly relationship to the network is a pretty remarkable thing. So I love to see this happen. I love how quickly we've been able to make it come together. The pilot, when it actually launched last week, and it was just super cool. We had a lot of our employees and MoneyGram employees going and actually making this happen, like going going into MoneyGram agents and putting cash in and taking cash off and testing the pilot itself. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, it has been really fun. We've got the same energy sort of on our side with, the opposite, right? So we kind of live in this, fiat cash world, and everybody's like, hey, let's, get our money into the USDC wallet. And it's also, I think, for us, exciting because it extends our use cases, right? We talk so much about cross-border payments, but we tend to focus primarily on first-generation, second-generation migrant use cases, right? People moving, and sending money back home. But the world isn't really necessarily about temporary workers moving money back home. It's about generational engagement. It's about changing lifestyles, and we're taking new consumers and bringing them into our world, which is exciting. The developers you talk about, people that have a lot of crypto and other digital assets that are sort of on-chain, trying to get it off-chain. But then you start thinking about all the permutations around that, right? How do we begin to solve for, volatile, fiat currencies, right? Like you've got Bangladeshi Taka, Ghanaian CD, these types of currencies that fluctuate like crazy. How do you take stable coins and how do you actually change the way that cross-border remittances are thought about? How do we actually stabilize some of that volatility? And then start thinking about different use cases in terms of how does money move cross-border? Can it move as a digital asset? Can it be settled later? I mean, it's sort of mind-blowing to start thinking about all the different use cases around that and how we begin to promote that. And then to your point, Denelle, right? You can start to add wallets almost seamlessly, right? They become stellarized. They're now connected to our network, and you can just kind of take off and run with it. So it's really exciting. And we've got a big agenda, I think, for 22, right?
Yeah.
a lot going on, a lot we're trying to do, trying to get cash around the world and a variety of, other things in the background.
And I think one of the things maybe that I didn't point out, which is really important, is that when an individual goes in wherever they are in the world, they take in their local fiat, and then when they go to redeem it and they want to pull the money off the blockchain, because of MoneyGram's ability to be able to have their local currency in all these different regions, they can get their local currency right out of it. And I think that's just a really important thing, that to be able to have the capability to be able to have cash available to you in those regions, it's not simple. I think a lot of times, again, we take for granted from where we sit in a privileged position to be able to have that at our local banks. It's just not the same in other regions. And so that's the cool part about it. It's not different for the cash consumer. The cash consumer has their local fiat on the way in and then has their local fiat on the way out.
So a lot of the themes we've touched on are really about financial inclusion, right? Making things more efficient and seamless, but just including more people who haven't typically have had access. And I know that's really core to Stellar's mission. Denelle, anything further you want to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, the Stellar Development Foundation, our mission is creating equitable access to the global financial system, and to do that using the Stellar network and all the different developers that are out there. And so I think that when we look at the world problem from this, you see a very fractured, and there's a lot of friction in cross-border. There's a lot of friction in getting money, sometimes just to your family that might only live. If you're in California, for example, Southern California, they might live in Mexico, but getting money down to them is very complicated. It's costly, and it takes time, and it's complicated. And so really what Stellar and what SDF is focused on is really trying to make that seamless. And the beautiful thing about this partnership is that, as you saw in the demo, that's what it's doing. It's making it seamless. It's not only making it seamless for the consumer, it's making it seamless for the developers. It's making it seamless from the back end standpoint of how MoneyGram gets its money in terms of the payment flow. And it just creates an opportunity to really be inclusive and to really reach those who you can't reach with the traditional financial infrastructure. I think that, again, when we think about what's so hard about, banking and having bank accounts, there's a lot of fees attached to that. There are a lot of ways that people get excluded from that because they don't have minimum balance requirements, because they don't have the proper track record to be able to demonstrate that the banks should take a risk on them. A lot of times they're considered too risky. That is not what can happen in this. This arrangement allows them to be able to have ownership and propriety over their assets and to build those assets. And so I think that that's the uniqueness of what blockchain offers, what Stellar's focused on, and also what this relationship with MoneyGram actually delivers into the blockchain ecosystem, is really creating that power for individuals who historically haven't had it.
And I know due to COVID and the pandemic, we saw remittances go down a bit over the last year and a half or so. To the extent you can say, how are you feeling about volume going into 2022 and economic recovery?
Yeah, it was an extremely surprising year with COVID, 2020 in particular. I'd say most companies in general, not just money transfer companies, but were down severely in kind of that March, April timeframe of 2020. And remarkably, I think unlike what was predicted from the World Bank and other economists, that remittances would be kind of damaged in a big way, we actually had incredible growth in 2020 and into 21. A lot of that propelled by digital. Obviously, there were a lot of locations closed on the cash side. But what we've built in terms of the ability for consumers to send online, to receive into wallets, into bank accounts around the world, actually helped us grow as an organization. We probably sent more money through MoneyGram in 2021 than we have in any year prior to that. So we're very proud of that. I do think that COVID has had a disproportionate impact on kind of the walk-in world, right, where people go out and I think that is propelling change in digital. I think it's forcing consumers to think differently about what they do on a daily basis and how they shop, how they interact. And it's been almost a couple of years now, right, 18 months at least, and growing with really no signs of slowing down. In fact, I was just traveling through Europe and cases are on the rise again. There's a lot more concern about how do they, so I think anything digital asset, anything blockchain is going to continue to gain momentum. Online shopping, online retail is going to continue to gain momentum. Beyond that, there's some questions around employment, right? There's questions around economic growth and where's all this going to come from. There's concerns now about inflation, so there's a lot of things happening, but our industry is extremely resilient. Our consumer base is always extremely resilient. When consumers couldn't work, they dipped into savings. Oftentimes people go home and travel, and when they do, they bring a lot of money with them and gifts, and they buy things for their loved ones when they return back to their home country. That couldn't happen, so they sent money instead. Rather than spending money on plane tickets, they sent that money home. So it's been really actually quite a remarkable success story. And I also think the more things have digitized, the more efficiencies we're seeing as well, and that's driven some costs down, which is important. MoneyGram's very proud that we've overachieved on the World Bank initiative of getting remittance costs below 3%. Our average is definitely below that, and in the online world is even lower. And a little bit back to Denelle's comments, the reason that the markets are inefficient, the reason that that it's expensive to send money is because the fees that are charged, right? It's all around the credit, it's all around the risks, it's all around how do you identify consumers, how do you think very differently about what it means to bank someone, and it's very complicated, and it does drive costs up. And I think that the new digital products, the new digital services, anything digital currency related, anything blockchain related, is about driving efficiency. And anytime you can drive efficiency, you can drive costs down. And that's exciting for us as well, because we want to continue to compete. We want to continue to push those costs down and continue to make the world a little bit more efficient if we can. So I think we're doing a good job of that. I'm pretty bullish on 2022. We've got a lot of initiatives underway at MoneyGram, obviously SDF partnership being one of the biggest. But we want to continue to do more, and I think you'll see that from us.
And I do think that the cash economies, we've seen a lot of what's happened in the cash economies through COVID, and they have moved a bit more towards digital, and so we're going to see that. And I also just want to point out that the important thing about the use of the stablecoin is that a lot of times when people think about blockchain, when you actually start with one asset, and if you're not relying on a stablecoin, so you're relying on a cryptocurrency, for example, you may start on one side and the asset may be worth something, and then you may end up on the other side where the asset's worth less. You don't want that when it's payments. You don't want that when it's remittances. So being able to leverage the stablecoin to be able to help these folks to make sure that they know what they're sending and they know it's going to be received on the other side, that is really valuable. And that's what blockchain can do. That's what this partnership can do, leveraging a stablecoin so that you don't have to guess about what's going to happen at the other side.
And we're about out of time. And Denelle, Alex, you talked about 2022 being really an exciting year. Denelle, if you could talk about one aspect you're really excited about for the coming year with this partnership, what would that be?
I think it's the fact that we're going to get it out there and have lots of wallets participate and actually then reach the humans on the other side, and the businesses too, which to me is just going to drive a tremendous amount of opportunity and growth for the blockchain, hopefully for MoneyGram's business, for the wallet partners that can do it. We talk about the wallets. A wallet could just be a wallet that you have sitting on an exchange, where now you can get in and you can actually bring your cash on and then have the opportunity to be able to invest and do what you want with respect to things on an exchange as well. So there's just huge opportunity from that standpoint. And when I think about our mission and I focus on equitable access to the global financial system, that is exactly what we're doing here, and that is what we're going to see more growth in 2022, and that is the thing that it gets me up in the morning and makes me excited about the day.
So Alex, any last words from you before we wrap?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned, we have a big slate for 2022, a lot going on at MoneyGram, and we're really, really excited about it, specifically to Stellar and what we're doing with SDF. We are going to get as many countries live as possible for cash out. I think we have a target for all of them, but regulators tend to step in, ask a lot of questions. So assuming that all goes great, that's definitely on the agenda, get this thing live and accessible to as many wallets as possible. And then excitingly, I think cash in is also a huge need as well, and we have 11 countries targeted for next year. And I think those will roll out as we can. It's a little more complicated to do the cash in side for a variety of reasons, but important aspect of bringing this all to life is creating the interoperability, and so both cash in and cash out are huge initiatives for us for next year. I have a lot to be thankful for, but I think the partnership here is is one that I'm very proud of. Super excited about what we can do in 2022 and beyond. And the pilot's going. We've got a lot on the agenda, and we'll get this thing live and running, and hopefully bring a lot of value to the world in doing that. So yeah, very exciting.
Well, that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here today. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening in. That's the end of our session today, and have a great one.